Connecticut Beekeepers Association teaching Beeyard, and we have a variety of different equipment in here, and we're going to go through and take a look at what we have first, and then later on, if we have time, we'll open up a colony. All right, so these are some of the ways that we deal with swarms during the season. You can see there's a lot of boxes here. There's 2 deeps, but there's a device in the middle that separates them. That's called a double screen. So if you look over here on the side, you can see that the bees enter into that top box through a door that only allows them to go into the top box. And so below it is another separate colony, another swarm that I caught that uses the front entrance. So it's a way to use a double screen. Very convenient way to use a double screen to have 2 boxes on 1 stand. This colony's making honey. This one's just building because it's a little slower. And so that's the use of a double screen. I'm going to show you. This is just a regular old colony, but this box, and this box here is made by a person up in Connecticut, and he roughs the inside of them so that he promotes the bees' use of propolis. So this is an experiment in our yard to put one of those boxes in there and see if the bees will make a lot of propolis along the edges and top. Propolis is good for bees. It's an antimicrobial. We normally discourage propolis building. In this box, we're trying to encourage it. They're also made a super of honey on that colony. Now, my way of figuring out what I'm doing for bees is to write what I've done on the top of the box. So in this case, this was made from swarm cells, and I split this out of a nuke on 5/9. So if I wanted to go back there and look at it, again, I can judge the progress by this kind of cryptic way I have of keeping a log on what's going on in the colony. I also treated this with Formic Pro on 5/28. All right, so bookkeeping, a basic of beekeeping or record keeping is a must. You find your way and how you do it. Find your own way, but you have to make certain that you know the history of your colonies, or else you get lost in it. Now, this is a really interesting stack of colonies. This is an Australian colony made by a company called Hive IQ, and it is, I'm a proponent of condensing colonies. This one actually comes made as a condensing colony. It's a high-density polystyrene, and this has a brood box and 2 supers. It's 9 frames, so it's a little bit uncustomary for U.S. beekeepers, but you can actually fit 9 frames into the boxes really nicely. And they only make a medium and a deep. So I went ahead and I needed more space in this colony, so I went ahead and made an adapter, this little wooden thing here. This little wooden sleeve allows me to put on traditional Langstroth boxes on top of their hive. Very good winter survival. Beautiful construction. High density polystyrene keeps the bees from eating it, chewing it, and has
similar to Appy May.
It's a little different than Appy May. It has way less parts than Appy May. So it had good winter survival, and it swarmed. Same thing here. Just a single. Now this is an interesting box. So this looks like it's one single box, but actually it has a division in the center of it. You can see some nails that I put in there, and that's a division board which divides that box into 2 separate colonies. It's a standard size Langstroth box, but the bees on this side that are coming in this entrance are prevented from coming over here, and they fly in this entrance only. So it's a 5-frame nuke on this bottom board, specially made bottom board. If you look on the other side, there's another colony in it. And this colony is a 5-frame nuke from this side. So these are resource colonies. In the event that I need a queen or some brood or something like that in other parts of the yard, I'll come here and I'll harvest out of these boxes. Right? So in this case, this box is doing nothing but hide feeders. If you look inside, you'll see that there's a feeder on this side that has syrup in it, and it's feeding that colony on that side. So the bees can come up here and get syrup from here, and it's still rather full, and they can go back down into that. Now it's still separated because they can't. The bees that are up here can't get into this side, so it's still 2 separate colonies, and you can feed them individually. So all this box does is cover that up.
Do you worry about them running out of space?
Yeah, you have to watch them because they will run out of space, and if they run out of space, they'll leave.
Swarm, right?
Yeah, they'll leave. They'll build swarm cells and leave. So this colony is just a standard configuration. A honey going to produce, it already produced a super full of honey. That's all it is a 2-box configuration. Standard, the way we keep bees, usually in the Northeast. 2 brood boxes and a super. Could have put more supers on it, but I didn't bother.
Do you have an excluder on there?
Yeah, there's a queen excluder here, and that keeps the queen laying down in these boxes. And the only thing up here is honey. That's full now, so I'll have to take that off.
That's a problem you want to have.
Yeah, yeah. You can have you can tolerate those kinds of problems. Of course, you have a lot of other problems with the Beeyard, and you know that.
Yeah.
All right, so here's an invention that I put together this winter. I managed to take advantage of the fact that there were lots of restaurants during the pandemic that used Lexan panels to separate their dining guests for health purposes. Actually, it was health code at the time. But as that crisis has sort of waned, the material that they used to build these partitions became available, and I got some for free. And I've had this in mind to do for a number of years, and I got around to doing it this year only because the Lexan, if you want to purchase it, is rather expensive. So this is a totally transparent colony, and it's brought hours of pleasure to the folks in this bee yard as it was building out. It has a clear top, but the big feature is the sides. All right, so it's a total transparent colony, and for teaching bee biology and the building a comb and the behaviors of bees, you know, it's just been fabulous to have. And it is a package that I put in March, at the end of March, and we haven't done anything to it. It did swarm, and we were able to see the swarm cells develop, and then the colony swarm.
Just starter strips, huh?
Just single starter strips, 1 inch wide, and I didn't put any end bars on the frames I built. So what they've done is they have attached comb. They call this a vertical attachment or burr comb to the sides. But then, if you'll notice, what they began to do is fill them with honey. So if you can actually film the process of bees going in those cells and working. You can see them just trying to get in there a little bit. But if you spend enough time here, you'll see them put nectar in those cells. It's an amazing thing that you normally would never see unless you had a vertical cell. And you can see these are capped already. The ends of those are capped. So it's just beautiful to look at.
You have a screen bottom board?
And there's a screen bottom board, right?
Ventilation?
Actually, the screen bottom board is so we can have this slide-in.
Looking for mites, or
This is a diagnostic drop board. So, if you look here, I mean, this was cleaned Sunday, right? So, so it's pretty clean, but you're still not seeing any mites drop out of this. Right, so that's what I use it for. I will put a sticky substance on it, and then I'll wait for 72 hours, and I'll come back and look and see if there are any mites. This colony has not showed any mite drop yet, which I think is a little bit unusual, but we'll see. I'm sure eventually they will. What I learned about exposing all of this sunlight to a colony is that it confuses them. So they find their way up to the top thinking that they're in the open space. So once you put the cover back on, they go back to normal. So it skews your observation a little bit when you open it. But this is a beautiful comb that only recently they built, and it's going to be the end comb for honey storage. Absolutely beautiful white capping. Okay. This colony is rather famous. It has a YouTube following. So yeah, I do shorts on it and longer videos. Some of the shorts are, and our YouTube channel has a special transparent colony series. It was since March.
So it hasn't gone over the winter yet?
No, it hasn't gone.
I see you're very insulated.
It's very insulated, and it'll stay that way. I mean, if it wasn't insulated, it wouldn't survive the heat game. Right. So yeah, we have to keep it insulated. And so it has a lot of nice insulation. And I didn't realize when I made Lexan, one of my goals for this colony was to do, I thought, well, it's transparent, so I'll do a lot of infrared photography on it. I have a nice infrared camera, except Lexan
blocks.
It's a reflection for infrared light, so you can't actually you can't actually do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really kind of cool. This has a Russian queen in it. I bought them from. So the yard has a mixture of varieties of queens. Pretty much they're just bee stock. But in this case, there's 4 of these colonies in here with Russian queens. These are specially bred by the Cold Country Queen Society, and they breed them in special ways by making certain they keep the genetics in line with what their objective is for a Russian queen.
Russian bees have a reputation of being aggressive.
Yeah, no, these are not. No, they're nice and gentle. Yeah, so he breeds them to be gentle. But what I found is you can see the activity on that board. Not much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my verdict is out on them.
Well, it's midday. They're not. The foragers are all out.
Yeah, but they would be coming in.
Yeah.
If it was a real busy colony. Caught this swarm yesterday. That swarm came out of the transparent colony. Nice queen.
You caught them in a tree close by?
All of them. I caught 9 swarms in these trees this year. Yeah, I caught what I think is every colony. This one swarmed this morning.
Do you have any traps up?
No, I did have a trap, but then it got occupied while the swarms were still happening. All right, so that little nuke, you'll see there's a trail into that back tree. It ended up in there. And it actually fell into the box when I cut the branch down, so I was able to just take it out of there and put it here. I have to find a permanent location for it. This colony swarmed today. All right, now this was kind of interesting. This is a single brood box. It was a package. It didn't build strong. So I thought I'll just let it stay in that one box. I don't ask these colonies to make honey because this yard's only about teaching. So I thought this would be good to show a colony that's just taken its time to build. Well, it swarmed. When I came here this morning, there was a beard of bees all over the front of this box. And then you can see that branch over there that's tilting down, that's still green. They landed on that. Wow. All right, so I was here for the gathering of the bivouac, which is, the first stage of them leaving to find a new home. So I cut that down, and I thought, okay, let me see if I can find the queen in it. I did. I caged the queen. I came back here with the bivouac and shook it back into the same colony. So this is the first time, I mean, and I've been beekeeping for, over a decade. I've been beekeeping pretty much steady for the last 15 years, but before that even a little bit. And I've always thought about doing that, never have. So I will see what happens. I caged her, and I cut down all the swarm cells that are in the box.
Is it full? Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Frames are all built out? And...
No. So
they have plenty of room. There's no reason for them.
There was no reason for them to swarm.
The mystery of beekeeping.
The mystery of beekeeping and reproductive swarms are still a mystery. When you look inside that colony, you'd say that there were no way that colony should have swarmed. First of all, now I've seen this as a characteristic this year that's not normal. This year I've seen more than one colony swarm with just one swarm cell capped, which is totally unusual. Usually if a colony is in the reproductive swarm mode, it will build 10 or 15 swarm cells, and maybe even more, and then finally swarm. So I really don't know what's going on this year. This one could have been a congestion situation. I don't know. But it just didn't make much sense.
So these guys are bearding?
They never go in the box. So there's 3 boxes like that. No matter what's occurring on the outside, the bees stay out there. They hang outside. It's this one, that one, and then that one over there that looks like a man with a little mouth.
Look at that.
They don't go in. All right, so they stay outside. Now this is the same. I think if we were going to open a colony, we would probably open this one to see if the actual manipulation that I made early in the spring worked. So to give you just a little brief history on what's going on here, this would be known as a demery or demery, depending on how you want to pronounce it, manipulation. So early in the spring, without showing any signs for swarming, I separated these boxes. These were the 2 original brood boxes, this one and this one. I took like the queen on the frame I found her on, put her in the center of that bottom box, and then backfilled that bottom box with capped brood and a lot of open frames. So basically what the bottom box has in it is a minimal amount of brood and a lot of drawn frames. So what occurs then is the colony, you're trying to coax the colony out of the reproductive mode, they're thinking it already swarmed. Now, at the same time, whatever was left, all of the brood, I put up here. So this was chock full of brood that had 2 frames, but that has no field force when you make this manipulation, because the field force flies out of that back door over here, finds its way out into the field. When it comes back into the bottom box. So that way you have a great population of foragers down below to care for this new colony that's going, well, the queen continues to lay eggs down there, and the colony grows down there. And if it all works right, you get a queen up here because they're separated by a queen excluder. They build honey in this box. All right, so this is a deep full of honey. This is one of those double screens, and the colony above is in here, and they've made a new queen, or we think they did. I haven't checked that yet. So that might be something that we should see if this manipulation worked. If it worked, there will be a queen in here and a queen in there, and then you can choose to do what you want with it later on. But you have the same, you've saved the genetics of the colony if you like that. If you like the genetics, you have made a ton of honey. You can put 4 or 5 supers in here. When I was really intent on a lot of honey production, I would always put 3 drawn medium supers above that bottom box right away, because they don't have any brood to care for, and with a big field force, they'll just bring in a lot of nectar and put up a lot of honey. This could be 70 or 80 pounds of honey. Now, it didn't look. This could be a full brood box. That I know is honey. So you can make honey in 2 locations on this box, right? So this is the principle of, if you can keep your brood and you can keep your bees, you can make a lot of honey.
Why didn't you put a queen excluder?
Oh, on here?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Why?
I had so this was some resources that I had that I wanted them to get up, and I didn't
get to it.
I didn't get to it, but I could have. So that's why I say this might be an interesting colony to get into to see what happens. That's another swarm.
Some beekeepers call queen excluders bee excluders.
Or honey excluders.
Yeah, they don't like them.
Yeah, I mean, that's because they don't know how to use them. Right, so if you have to learn how to use a queen excluder, you have to make certain that that your colony, if you're going to depend on your colony to draw comb above a queen excluder to make honey for you, in, say, a medium, you have to look for, there's a sign you look for as an experienced beekeeper. You're going to look for what we refer to as frost wax. So bees will not draw out foundation until all of the room in the bottom box is finished. And they tell you when that's happening, because they will, on the top of the combs, they'll build this beautiful white wax we call frost wax, and you'll see the shoulders in the box, the box where you're suspecting, you'll see the shoulders on those honeycombs turn white. In that case, you know that they're trying to find space to build honey. That's when you put your super on.
That's not burr comb.
That's not burr comb. No, they're just like scrambling to figure out whether. And then you got bees producing wax glands. You know, their wax glands are active. They're producing scales. They have nothing to do with them. So you put a queen excluder on at that point, and you put foundation on, and you got it. They'll draw it out. That's the path where that swarm was. This was the same manipulation, except I did this one with queen cells. So this colony I didn't catch like I did that one. So this colony already was in the swarm mode. So in this case, I took all of the frames, same manipulation, left the queen back there, but I picked the original queen, the laying fertile queen, in this box.
How did you know they were in swarm mode?
Well, they had swarm cells they were building. All right, so then I took all the swarm cells, frames with swarm cells and brood out of there, and put it up here. And then I did the same thing. So down here, then I just had the original fertile queen, a little bit of brood, no swarm cells, and then the rest of these frames were drawn comb. Queen excluder, super. Now you could have put 3 or 4 supers on them. I could smell the honey in this colony. They made a lot of honey. Yeah. Same thing I did over here as I did there. I just put this box on top. So now this one, they should be making a queen up here because they had swarm cells. I didn't check it yet. And the front has always been beautiful. So the front has a lot of foraging activity usually. Today it's a little bit light, but you can see them coming back. They're bringing pollen in. That's a pretty good sign that there's brood in there to feed. So the original queen likely stayed in there. Likely this colony didn't swarm. And if I would have put on 3 supers, I would have gotten a lot of honey out of it. But I'm not doing that. Right? I'm just... And this is the same box, kind of box, that we talked about in the other corner, where it's divided in half. There's 5 frames on this side, and then there's 5 frames on the other side. But this is a great study in the difference of colony strength. If you look at this side and then the other side, you can tell that there's a big difference in the strength of these 2 colonies. You might see a bee come out of there now and then, right? So this is a very weak, small colony, and that's a totally breaking out of the seams 5-frame nuke. So the responsible thing to do here is to combine these 2. And then you would have one strong colony. That little nuke needs more room, and this one has no population.
And you just remove the divider.
You can't remove it. You got to put it all into one big box. It's permanent.
You can't just remove the divider?
No, the divider doesn't come up.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh.
No, it goes all the way down to the bottom of the frame. That's a good question. It goes right down to there and up to here. You can't, it's totally in, so it keeps bees out from leaking through. You can see the complete difference in the behavior. So this is a colony that I want to do something with. I want to make sure that I I do that manipulation. I'll probably do that tomorrow, where they have some space to continue to grow. Yeah, so this is just a plain old, run-of-the-mill, classic double brood box colony.
Two deeps.
Two deeps, very slow overwintered colony. It overwintered beautifully, but it just didn't build. Now it's starting to build.
Do you insulate for the winter?
Absolutely, yeah. I put nice sleeves over all of these. Langtress boxes have this little ledge on them, you'll see. Some of them have it on the back too. But I have a sleeve that goes over, and all of these tops are insulated already. I run them all year long. And so those are all insulated colonies. Now, I also put this little device in the back over here for using vaporization, oxalic acid vaporization.
Yeah.
So if you take this little plug out, see the bees have already propolized that. That's a metal insert that you use in sort of like cabinetry or furniture making that has a 1/4-20 screw in it, and you insert it into wood, then you can screw something to it. But in here, I put them in here because it protects. This little space right here is below the frames. So I can use my oxalic acid vaporization device and plug it right in there. And if you just drill a hole in here and don't protect it like I am with this little insert, it starts to wobble and wear the wood out, and then it gets really loose and ugly, and eventually you can't use it. So you'll see that little device in almost every one of my colonies. This colony has a really interesting history, and it turned out good for everything. It's a swarm. Yeah, that's my little... Yeah, so that's the writing I use. This came over the winter as a laying colony. The queen ran out of sperm, or something happened to her, and she stopped laying fertile eggs. So early in late February, early March, the only thing coming out of this colony were full-size drones. So I let that happen for a while. The colony ran out of gas because it didn't have any really workers at that point. I let it go for about a month, and then I just shook it out. And it's not a laying worker colony. It was an unfertilized queen. She lost her fertility. And so you can tell it because you can
replace her?
No, I put a swarm in it.
Ah, okay.
And then after that it was perfect. And then the same thing, another swarm on top. I got this one from our friend Armando, and he put this. He wanted me to take this swarm and that one.
He's the swarm man.
So here they are, yeah. So this one is same thing. This colony flying into this door, and a colony on the bottom coming into the front entrance. It's just a conservation of stand real estate.
What's this odd-looking colony in the middle?
All right, that's a top bar hive. Right, and we've got a couple of them. This was the interesting part about the history of this colony is that some entrepreneurs got together with well-intentioned entrepreneurs got together and built what they thought would be a wonderful colony to bring to Africa and help the the population of beekeepers in Africa, especially Kenya, to keep bees and harvest honey. So he made this design. This is called the Kenyan top bar hive, and it's kind of interesting. We have a little one over there we can look at, and but the problem is that this shape of this and the wood required to make it is just as expensive and a barrier of entry as a regular Langstreth box would be, because this was supposed to solve the problem of the expensive Langstreth box, except you brought the same problem to them So I've traveled in Africa pretty extensively, all through the savannah and in the highland area, and with the University of Pennsylvania beekeeping. And they don't use this box. They still use their log hives, right? They can make a log hive for nothing. They cut the tree down. They have their investment in tooling to make a log hive is just one big
Now,
chisel.
has Kenya introduced Italian or other?
No. Those are all sculata.
They're all Africanized bees?
No, they're all African bees.
They're African bees, yeah.
Yeah, they're all African bees. They're all scutellata, Apis mellifera scutellata. And then there's a couple of different ancestral species down around the shore. But of course, taxonomy is a really interesting art and not totally settled ever. And they argue about that all the time. But there are some really interesting other bees that I saw on the shoreline. But mostly scutellata and no real defensive colonies.
Really?
So the ones that I've seen, they did say, okay, we have to stay away from that colony. The problem is when an African colony gets defensive, it'll go after the whole town.
Yeah.
If the town is 3 kilometers away, they'll go after it. So, and Dr. Lucy's elephant fence venture down there, where she's using beehives and putting them on fences around garden plots, not garden plots, but fields of grain and corn. And we happened to spend some time with her. It was just wonderful to see how the bees will actually respond to disturbance of that wire. So they're just sort of basically hanging on a wire. And during the day, no problem. But if an elephant comes and knocks that wire, they come out and they know exactly where to sting elephants. They sting them behind the ear, in the nose, and elephants cannot sting bees. They run away from them. So that's the Beeyard.